Yeah. Red hat, black chucks, black 501 zone. That's your baby mama, but her number's in my iPhone. Yeah.
Talk about the Duke Blue Devils, obviously led by the senior Grayson Allen. Very, I'll say, controversial player. He's pretty good. Pretty good 3-point shooter. You know, glad that this is going to be his final year. Kind of tired of seeing him because he's a good player, but at the same time he's a senior. He should probably make more points than he does. But you know, for some reason, like ESPN has just turned around and like now likes him, or like they've turned him into like a feel good story instead of like a villain. So it's just kind of weird. Marvin Bagley, hell of a player. Best player in college basketball. His ability to offensive rebound, his ability to defensive rebound, his moves down low, his ability to step outside and shoot a bit. This kid is amazing. I think the main reason, though, that I like him a lot is his ability to rebound. He's a tenacious rebounder on both ends of the floor, and that's what really makes this team scary. Duke always lacks rebounding, and they have that this year. Some other guys on the team. Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter is not as advanced as Marvin Bagley, but he's a good player, a freshman. And then another freshman, Trevon Duvall. He's a good player. I've seen him play in high school some, and he's done good. He manages the team very well, manages the game. He's a guy I'd like to see come back and play under Coach K for a couple of years, maybe just 2. Gary Trent Jr., really good shooter. He steps out, shoots threes. And you don't really see a lot of guys other than that. Marquise Bolden comes in, the sophomore from DeSoto. You'll see a little bit of Alex O'Connell, who's a 3-point shooter, but they mainly play those 5 guys, and they play most of the game. So they're not that deep of a team, but very solid 5 on that team. North Carolina, Joel Berry went through a little transformation this summer, got his body right. You know, not that his body was wrong or anything, but he's really tried to improve, knowing this is his last year here and really wants this team to be good. Luke Mayo, the walk-on, who's a junior now, had a really good sophomore season, came on late, but really good. He's been their best inside guy, good rebounder, probably averages about a double-double. Theo Pinson has definitely got to show off a little bit more with him being more on the forefront for North Carolina. Kenny Williams has been able to step out and shoot threes, a good player there. And then some of the new guys, Garrison Brooks has played a bit. Cameron Johnson, who transferred in over from Pittsburgh, has after his knee surgery has been getting to play a good amount lately. Good 3-point shooter. Sterling Manley, another big man that they've got. So they're reloading. This doesn't look like a year that North Carolina is going to win a national championship or anything, but they're definitely going to be a good team. Probably make a pretty deep run. Miami is my 3rd team on here. You know, they started really good. They had a bad loss to New Mexico State. New Mexico State's not a bad team though, and talk about this team, Bruce Brown, the sophomore. If he's having a good game, it's really hard to beat Miami. He'll take over a game. And then Jaquan Newton, a pretty good, not as good 3-point shooter, but outside 2 mid-range guy, good shooter, good game manager. He's a senior this year. Anthony Lawrence, who's a junior, has improved, you know, a little bit each year. But some of the guys that came on that made this team, you know, more of a team to talk about this year has definitely been Lonnie Walker, who's been good, and Chris Likes. Both those guys have been good. And then Dejan Veselvik, I can't say his name, but he's a pretty good 3-point shooter that starts from Australia. And then the big men are Dewan Huel and Izabuk Izwandu. Can't say his name, but those guys are the big men. They do a pretty good job on the inside. I think Miami is going to be a tournament team. They're a top tier they're in the top tier of the ACC, and I like what I've seen so far. And you know, Larinaga is a good coach. Florida State, I like Florida State. A bit of a surprise, maybe. The way they played against Duke, you know, they showed me that they could compete with Duke. And they have a very deep team. That's something that I really like, is these deep teams. You know, they did lose a good amount of guys from last year. Michael Ojo, Jonathan Isaac, Dwayne Bacon, Xavier Rather-Mays, all those guys are gone, but they got guys that have just picked up the slack. Phil Kofer, real good player. He can step out and shoot threes. He didn't get to play a whole lot last year. He's a senior this year. He's getting to play. Brian Angola Rodas, he's had a really good game against Duke. He can step out to shoot the three. He's a senior. Trent Forrest, Terrence Mann, who's a junior. Terrence Mann didn't get to do a whole lot of shooting against Duke, but he's probably their best player. PJ Savoy, CJ Walker. Chris Kumaje was hurt for that game, so they didn't have him. And they have a lot of other guys on this team that play. MJ Walker, and they have a 7-footer, Abagu, who's a freshman, Kabinjili, who's a 6'8" guy who he's beginning to play. I like Florida State. I think Florida State's better than a couple of these other teams, but they're the start of Tier 2. They're not Tier 1. They're starting off Tier 2 for the ACC for me. My next team on my list is gonna have to be Virginia. Maybe a bit of a surprise here too, but Virginia, I really like Tony Bennett and his defense. I always, every year, Virginia is not supposed to be good, or this is the year Virginia is not going to be that good, and they do good every year. Devon Hall is their senior. Isaiah Wilkes is another senior that starts. Those two guys are pretty good seniors, but the scorers are Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome, both freshmen last year. I saw this coming. Both the guys would come on and shoot threes off the bench, but Kyle Guy was really good last year. He's their main scorer now, and Ty Jerome had a really good game against Boston College. They got them that win. So I like them. Not a deep team, but they play really good defense, and I think that's going to really cause havoc this year in the ACC. My next team on this list is Louisville. Louisville, to me, they are projected a little bit higher. They have a really good team, but no Rick Pitino, big problems. Scott Padgett's done a good job with the team so far, but he just doesn't, play the same type of game that Pitino does. He doesn't jump on the guys like Pitino does. But talking about this team, VJ King, Dang Adele, really good players. Dang Adele's the best player on their team. He's an NBA prospect to me. Anis Mahmoud, a 7-footer from Egypt, good shot blocker, gets a lot of trash buckets. Ryan McMahon steps out, shoots threes, comes off the bench. Their point guard is Quentin Snyder, pretty good point guard. He gets hot and cold. If he's shooting 3-pointers, Louisville usually plays better. If he's not, they usually struggle. And then Raymond Spalding, a 6'10", real lanky guy, good defender. He's finally starting to come on. But that's mainly their team. No Brian Bowen after the issues in the offseason, so they don't have him. I think that was a big key that if he was going to be there, they were going to be a little bit better, and he's not. Virginia Tech, another very good team. Virginia Tech could very well be ahead of Louisville in my rankings. They're a very deep team. It depends on if they can come and if they shoot the ball that night. Best players on this team, Chris Clark. I really like Chris Clark. He reminds me of a Jay Crowder type. Not just because he has dreads, but I think because he's a good defender and he's a glue guy at the NBA level. He's gonna be a glue guy. He's gonna be really good. I like him. Some of the other guys, Justin Bibbs, good shooter. Justin Robinson, he's the conductor. He runs the team. And then Kadim Sy, Ty Outlaw, Ahmad Hill, Kenny Blackshear, all guys that play a good amount that are key parts of this team. And then Nickel Alexander Walker, actually a brother of the Alexander for Kentucky. He's the freshman. He's been pretty good thus far this year. My next team that we're going to talk about is Syracuse. I've got Syracuse as my next team. I think Syracuse is going to make the tournament this year. The Boeheim zone really gives teams trouble. This team's just not really deep. Tyus Battle is their best player, best scorer, and then another good guy on this team is Frank Howard. He's the point guard, pretty good little point. Terrian Thompson has played a bit, but not a whole lot. I hadn't seen a whole lot of him. Pascal Chukwu, who's 7'2", kind of a waste of space type player, but he's been good. He starts. But the main guy that's came on this year that's really helped this team out is O'Shea Brissett. He's a freshman. He's got a couple double-doubles. Another one, Matthew Moyer, who redshirted last year on a medical redshirt. Those guys both start, and they've really helped this team out. I don't know how deep this team can go, but I look at them as a team that can make the tournament at the end of the year. My next team, Notre Dame, and this is a team that I guess you would say, wow, why are they so low? Well, Bonzie Colson's out for the next 8 weeks, and this is just the start of the conference play. I don't like this team without Bonzie Colson. You know, he's the leading rebounder, leading scorer. I think he's probably the leading steals guy, shot blocker. He leads the team in a lot of categories, and now he's out. Matt Farrell is a good player, and he's going to pick up the slack in scoring, but I don't think he's going to be able to pick up the slack in those other places. TJ Gibbs is going to have to come on. Rex Pfluger is going to have to come on. They just don't really have a lot of big men presence. And Bonzie Colson was preseason ACC Player of the Year, and now he's out. I think this definitely doesn't help Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame to me was a high end, tier 2 ACC team, which is now a low 2-tier team, maybe even tier 3. And I don't see them making the tournament unless, Colson come back. And it's a foot injury. Foot injuries, if you come back too early, you can re-injure them very easily. I'm really concerned about, Notre Dame making the postseason this year. I don't think that's in the cards for them this year. Okay, so Wake Forest really struggled in preseason, lost to a couple of smaller schools. But at the same time, this is a somewhat of a young team, and if they play good in the ACC, they definitely can get themselves back in it. I really like Brandon Childress, one of the coach's sons. He's a sophomore this year, good player. Brandon Crawford is their best player, though. Good point guard, good little scorer. Some other guys to go with that. Mitchell Wilbekin, who can shoot threes, brother of Scotty Wilbekin. Keyshawn Woods is another good scorer. He's probably their number 2 scorer. Doral Moore, a 7'1" guy who didn't really get to play a whole lot last year because of John Collins. He's came on. He's been good. Dinas Michelou, he can step out and shoot threes. He's a big man. Oliver Sarr is a freshman. I've seen him play a good amount. So we'll see what happens with Wake Forest. They probably aren't a tournament team, but let's not write them off yet with Notre Dame going down. And usually there's always a good amount of teams that make it out of the SEC or ACC every year. Next team, let's talk about Clemson. Clemson definitely started the year pretty strong, and not that they've really played a whole lot of good teams or nothing like that, but we'll see how they fare in the ACC play. Sheldon Mitchell is probably their best player returning. Marquise Reed is another good one. They're both juniors. Dante Grantham is a senior. He's one of their big men. Gabe DeVoe plays. He's a senior. Elijah Thomas, who's a junior. He starts. Mark Donald, who transferred over from Michigan, he's been able to come out and he's able to step out and shoot threes, which has been good for them. So we'll see what happens with Clemson, but they're definitely at the back of the pack. We'll see if they can get more to the front by the end of the year. Next team, I'm going to talk about BC. BC is kind of projected as one of the bottom feeder teams, and they are definitely a bottom feeder team, but that win against Duke was huge, and they do have some good players. Jerome Robinson, Kai Bowman, and then Jordan Chapman's their big 3. That's mainly their team. Jerome Robinson's the point guard. Kai Bowman kind of plays more of like the 2, I feel like. But those are the guys that run the team. I don't see Boston College making the tournament this year, though. Next, NC State. They got the new coach from UNC Wilmington, Kevin Keats, and this team is honestly not bad, but I just don't see them, panning out on the floor. Omar Youssevin, the 7-footer from Turkey, who's not bad. He's just hadn't really found himself yet, and then Alric Freeman, who transferred in over Baylor, he's been good so far. And then Doran Torn, Abdul Malik Abu are some guys that I remember from last year. Leonard Freeman sat out last year for injury, but those are all 3 guys that have played a good amount. And then they have a freshman, I think Braxton Beverly, who's been good when he plays. But this is just, a bottom feeder team in the ACC. We'll see if they can get some upsets here and there. Next team, we're going to talk about Georgia Tech. Not really, Georgia Tech played really good last year. Somehow they got 21 wins, and they made it to the title game in the NIT. Josh Pastner got a lot of credit for that last year. And returning Ben Lammers from San Antonio, their best player, good shot blocker, good rebounder, pretty good scorer also. I like Ben Lammers a lot. And then Josh Aoki, another really good scorer for them. He was a freshman last year. And then Tadrick Jackson is another guy that's pretty good. But this is not a very deep team, and they're going to struggle in ACC play. Next team I'm talking about, and the last team I'm talking about for the ACC is the Pitt. This team is ass. And I don't say that a lot about a lot of teams, but when you're bringing back your main guys, Ryan Luther, that sucks. And guys that they're bringing in, Malik Ellison from St. John's, who's not bad, but this is just not a very deep team. They brought 3 guys back from the year before, all seniors. Obviously, this isn't Kevin Stallings, team or unit. These new guys are going to be it. He did a good job with Marcus Carr. He's a good player who's a freshman, and also